Finally, the last episode of Kuma's past, where he's about to lose all his freedom and turn into a government robot, obeying those who've enslaved him and his family his entire life. So, my friend, brace yourself, because the end of this episode is definitely one of the saddest I've ever seen in my life. Little Kuma remembers when he fell flat on his face chasing a bird, and after his dad begged to free his wife and son because he's the only one with Buccaneer blood, after a few whippings for stopping work to scratch his butt, and finally, his dad turning into a human jerky. He wakes up with Ivankov saving him from being captured by the other slaves. The human hunt had begun, and everyone was running for their lives. The Celestial Dragons earned points for killing rabbits, and the winners got sweet prizes. Garling tells the kids to learn from the master and shows them how it's done. But the others are like, "We're not letting you take all the credit," and they start shooting at everyone in sight. The fugitives couldn't believe they were being treated like toys. Ivankov says they're going to carry out this operation, no matter the cost. But up on the cliff, they were being watched by none other than Saturn the Idiot. At the Navy HQ, a soldier asks Garp to head to God Valley. But Garp's like, "I'm not joining this little celestial dragon excursion." He tells them not to poke the hornet's nest. He says this because while the slaves were being hunted, he was chilling in paradise with some hotties playing volleyball. But as soon as he hears Roger's name, Garp drops everything and bolts to God Valley. The Rock's pirates set sail from Hachinosu, and some weaklings think they can go after them like they're actually gonna do something. Back at the Celestial Dragon's little fun and games, Kuma gets shot with an arrow to stay sharp. But they keep running for their lives. They look at the sea and the island is surrounded by Navy ships. The same Navy that should be helping them, not hunting them, right? But Ivankov says all this cruelty is going to be erased from history, a murder game to wipe out the island's inhabitants and take everything they have. In 3 weeks, each of the 100,000 rabbit fugitives will just be a statistic. And all they can think is that this is hell on earth. A guy says if they can survive 3 weeks, they'll be free. But of course, that's not going to happen. They just say they'll let the survivors go to keep hope alive, since it's no fun killing people who've already lost the will to live. On the other side of the island, Garling had already racked up 100,000 points, because he was hunting the rabbits worth the most points, and the celestial baddies were already falling for him. The kids used a shark fish man to break the shackles with his powerful jaw. Ginny was confused because she'd sent out a bunch of info, but neither the Navy nor the pirates had made a move yet. When they asked what she was doing, she just grinned and said, "I'm manipulating info." Since the prizes for this competition are a devil fruit that turns the eater into a mythical blue dragon, and I swear I've seen that lizard somewhere. The other prize is the pawpaw fruit, which lets the user send themselves and others to distant island. So if one of them eats one of these fruits, they can escape this hellhole. To make it happen, 2 weeks ago, Ginny leaked info about this island to the outside world. So any minute now, a bunch of pirates should be showing up looking for these treasures. But that wasn't enough. One of them had to draw the Celestial Dragon's attention to make the plan work. And while everyone was in shock, Kuma said he could be the bait, since he's big and can last longer than the others. And he says he'd rather not see anyone else die. Ivankov was already hyped, yelling that no one was going to lay a finger on Kuma. They were all going to escape God Valley together. Out of nowhere, one of the Navy ships gets blown to pieces by the Rock's pirates, who had just pulled up ready to snatch those legendary treasures. And right behind them, a whole parade of pirate crews was on the way to crash this little rich people hunting party. Rox shouted at the Navy that resistance was useless and ordered his pirates to follow him. And this was not your average crew. This was a Hall of Fame lineup, starting with Whitebeard, asking since when he became someone's subordinate. On his shoulder was little Miss Stussy, being called pathetic by none other than Gloriosa, the original savage from Amazon Lily. Right behind them was Golden Lion Shiki yelling that the treasure belongs to whoever gets there first. But Big Mom, greedy as always, said she wanted both of them. Classic Linlin, still on that all-you-can-eat mindset. Kaido said the devil fruits would be useless to her anyway, since she already had heard. And last but not least, Captain John. Yep, that Captain John. The one who hid the treasure buggy's been chasing for 30 years. Now that's one wild team. You think they could throw hands with the Straw Hats? The Celestial Dragons were already losing it over the Rock's pirates showing up, screaming that if anything happens to them, the Navy is toast. At Marine HQ, someone asked how the pirates even found out, since this event was supposed to be top secret. But while they were freaking out, guess who pulled up next? The Roger Pirates. Roger himself rolled up with Rayleigh and Gabon, ready to make the Celestial Bastards regret ever being born. Garling barked orders to gather the troops and protect the dragons, and the other Holy Knights were roasting the Navy, calling them a bunch of useless clowns. There were legendary pirates everywhere, and the kids had to grab the treasures before someone else did. One soldier said, with Rox and Roger both there, they would not last long. But backup had just arrived. Garp came in yelling, demanding to know where that damn Roger was. The Navy celebrated like their Uber Eats order just showed up. Celestial dragons were scrambling for cover while two little punks were cleaning out the treasure stash. They snagged both devil fruits, and Kuma didn't even know he had to eat them. But of course, happiness never lasts long for broke folks, and Big Mom dropped in like a Macy's parade balloon, holding Ivankov by the neck. She shouted that she almost lost the fruits to those brats. She tried grabbing the other one too, but the air fryer-headed legend grabbed her leg and yelled at Kuma to just eat the damn thing already. The big guy dashed off, and Linlin yeeted Ivankov into a wall. Ivankov shouted that if even one of them survived, they'd win. So Kuma swallowed the fruit in one big bite. But the second he looked back, boom! Saturn hit him with the meanest drive-by slap of the century, telling the Buccaneer his destiny was to be a slave and die. But Kuma said it was strange how people like Saturn were born to be important, while people like him were born to be shackled. And he said if he had any power like Nika, he'd use it to save as many broken souls as he could. Saturn replied, that's exactly why people like Kuma had to be wiped out. While Rox and Roger were clashing for the treasures, the whole incident was fading into history's shadow, like it never even happened. Sometime later, back in the Sorbet Kingdom, Ivankov asked, is that all they're going to tell about Garp's heroic deeds? And said that so-called journalist Morgan's was trash. Nobody had a clue what actually happened on that island after they escaped. Ivankov asked how long Kuma was going to keep praying, and he said he couldn't stop thinking about all the people he could have saved. But Big Head told him to stop blaming himself, because in the middle of that nightmare, he saved over 500 lives. Ginny added that all those people cried out of pure gratitude. They said his hands were the hands of liberation, and Kuma remembered his father's words, the warrior of liberation will come. After everything, Ivankov decides to set sail and enjoy his freedom. And Kuma says he'll never forget his face. Well, with that Funko Pop head of his, hard to forget, right? Ginny says she'll stay here with Kuma until they figure out what to do. I won't even tell you what they're up to. She says now that she's 4 years older, she has to take care of Kuma. Tried chopping some wood but nearly broke her back. Then the little guy showed up to do the hard work. And after chopping everything, they were gonna sell it. No more picking through trash and stealing. Now they're gonna make some real money and eat like actual humans. After selling everything, they were starving. And then some cowboy shows up saying he doesn't know these two. They start throwing rocks at Kuma, calling him a monster and a liar for saying he's only 9 years old. But Ginny went full savage and tried to beat those little jerks up. Kuma, being the idiot he is, went to help them and took all their pain away. And as you know, he can't just send the pain away, so he took all of it onto himself. Then the little punks made a fan club for him. At night, they finally ate a real meal after years. And since Ginny eats like a dragon, Kuma would have to work twice as hard to buy food. She asks how old Kuma was when he became a slave, and when he says he was 4, she happily says, same as me. But deep down, she was crying like crazy, happy to finally be free. And Kuma was crying like a newborn, telling her to stop crying. 8 years after the God Valley incident, Kuma was now a pastor at the church, where he helped the old folks of the town, taking away all their back pain and fixing those messed up knees. The old folks were so impressed they'd line up just to be helped. One grandma says she's been going to this church since his father was the boss. She was shocked when they all disappeared out of nowhere, but she was happy that he came back. And she's sure his parents are smiling somewhere, knowing their son turned into a good pastor. Little did they know, Kuma's parents had already turned into statistics for the Celestial Dragons. The old folks couldn't stop thanking Kuma's miraculous hands and asked if he could do this during the week as well. But Ginny came in, stomping her feet, shouting that he only does it on Saturdays. She said these lazy old folks don't even pay for this and are asking for more, and told them this wasn't a hospital, so they should just leave. But the old folks cracked up. The Japanese girl said she had a dirty mouth but was so beautiful. And oh yeah, beautiful is an understatement. As for the daughter, we can't say much because she's underage. The mom, my friend, she is very hot. They said the men of the town kept asking her out, but she rejected them all because she already had Kuma. She turned as red as a tomato and told them to get out. Later, an old woman said she'd pay Kuma the most she could if she could. But it's tough to survive with the Celestial Dragon's taxes. And now, they have a new, terrifying king. King Bikori, known for being cold and heartless. So if they get sick, they can't even pay the celestial tribute. They heard about a man who got locked up and starved to death. The king doesn't give food to prisoners and still kisses the celestial dragon's boots. Yeah, he's a real piece of work. With this, the poor old folks are basically dead, unless they stay healthy. Ginny was holding back. But Kuma said if it's a light pain or discomfort, he could heal them every week. The asylum fugitives had no money to give, but made a carrot cake for them, and it was delicious. That night, Ginny was shaking like a leaf, while Kuma was facing a massive ball of pain. That pain was everything he took from those lazy old folks. And just like Zoro took Luffy's pain, he jumped right into it. It was so much pain the church was about to explode. He had to take it all, or else it would go back to the old folk. After absorbing it all, he was just a wreck, and Ginny couldn't stand seeing him go through this every week. Imagine now that the old folks wanted to come every day. She asks how he handles it, saying they don't even know how much he's suffering. But Kuma says it's the only way to end everyone's pain. Because if the pain doesn't go to someone else, it'll come back to the people. But the most important thing is that he's happy seeing everyone happy. He said he was going to train to get stronger, but Ginny said that wasn't the problem. But she was super happy when Kuma said the old folks gave them food. On the first bite of the ham sandwich, she was in heaven. Kuma asks if she wants to go somewhere with him tomorrow. They plan a BBQ by the river. 5 years later, everything's chill. Ginny looks like a Disney princess, and Kuma looks like an Electrolux fridge with 2 doors and ice coming out of it. While they're having coffee, Ginny looks at a rainbow and says, "Let's get married." The boy turns all red while she's throwing hearts everywhere. But Kuma gives her the cold shoulder and she's like, "What the heck? I know you love me too, and I promise I'll make you happy." He says, "I know that." But he remembers that his mom was taken out just for marrying a buccaneer, and he doesn't want the same to happen to her. He tries to change the subject by saying he saw news about the Revolutionary Army. He says their leader, Dragon, is a cool guy, and says one day he wants to go to the sea and dedicate his life to saving people too, just like Nika, the warrior of liberation. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and Kuma thinks it's someone wanting treatment at the crack of dawn. But it's 3 old dudes with a basket of fish they just caught. They give it to them as a gift, and Ginny throws a basin at Kuma's pot. The guys laugh, saying she's mad at him, but she's almost crying because Kuma doesn't want to marry her. 3 years later, a major incident shook the Sorbet Kingdom. All the elders were being arrested, and out of nowhere, Kuma appeared, demanding to know what was going on. He ordered the release of everyone, but the scoundrels drew their swords, questioning if he dared to challenge the royal army. The old folks couldn't move or speak without risking their lives. They asked if the young pastor hadn't heard about the new law allowing them to exploit people from the south at will. Kuma, recalling his own and his parents' experiences, questioned if they were being enslaved again. With blood boiling, the guards claimed it was the king's will, and that the southern folks would work until death. Kuma unleashed a paw-shaped blast, slamming one of the scoundrels into the wall. He followed with a flurry of paw attacks, taking down the rest without harming any civilian. The elders fled, and the guards decided that mere enslavement wasn't enough. They needed to eliminate them. Kuma then created a massive paw covering half the city, declaring he wouldn't allow it, and launched it to obliterate the king's lackey. Ironically, this played into the wicked king's hand. He believed the elderly were a burden, unable to pay taxes, and that removing them would enrich the kingdom. Meanwhile, Kuma was imprisoned and questioned why Ginny and the others were also detained. She laughed, saying she wouldn't let him fight alone, though they admitted they got beaten badly. Kuma, frustrated, slammed the ground, questioning how they could enslave others just for living in the South, highlighting the kingdom's discrimination against the poor. Ginny remarked that the king was merely a puppet of the celestial dragon, and rebelling against the country meant facing the world government. Suddenly, the kingdom was attacked by armed soldiers. They rushed to warn the king, but it was too late. The attackers were already threatening him. A large-headed man appeared, vowing not to let the scoundrel escape. Thanks to the Revolutionary Army, the Sorbet Kingdom narrowly avoided enslavement. The citizens celebrated, and Dragon noted the chaos Kuma had caused. They opened the cell door, and the Funko Pop-headed man mentioned hearing about Kuma and Ginny's imprisonment, prompting their rescue mission. Both were stunned to see Ivankov, and even more so upon recognizing Dragon, the Revolutionary Army's leader. The balloon-headed man invited Kuma to join them in changing the world. Kuma was overjoyed, and Ginny agreed to join as well. Thus, the freedom fighters, channeling the people's anger against the government, took up arms in response to the O'Hara tragedy, forming the renowned Revolutionary Army. Dragon mentioned their lack of funds, but planned to train willing recruits to fight. Kuma inquired about his combat skill, and Luffy's absentee father revealed his past in the Navy, which he left due to its lack of justice. They pledged to follow him to the end, and Dragon assured them they wouldn't regret it. Later, Kuma returned to the church to bid farewell to the elders, promising occasional visits. Time passed, and Ginny became the Eastern Forces captain of the Revolutionary Army. She joyfully sang Kuma's name, excited to reunite with his group the next day. The others envied her, as all their crushes were smitten with Kuma. Ginny told them to get real, as she was out of their league. That same day, a mysterious man appeared, and Dragon received a desperate call from a soldier reporting Ginny's abduction, caught off guard by the enemy. Upon hearing this, Kuma nearly had a heart attack, struggling to believe it. At the Revolutionary Army's secret base, the soldiers were begging the main battalion for help. Their men were getting wiped out one by one, but Ivankov said they couldn't go because they were busy transporting injured people from Goa. Then Kuma shows up saying he's going, but Balloonhead didn't want to let him go because the big bear was still a bit too wild after what happened to Ginny. Kuma wasn't having any of it though, and instantly teleported to the battlefield. He landed like a meteor, eyes full of rage, remembering when he found out Ginny was kidnapped by a celestial dragon. She was taken on a government ship to become one of those filthy creatures' wives. Kuma started throwing punches left and right, sending people flying. He used a powerful Ursa shock that sent half the city flying into the air, and with just him, he won the battle. Of course, the soldiers were celebrating, thinking the 3-year war was finally over, all thanks to the Revolutionary Army. But Kuma couldn't stop thinking about Ginny's army, completely wiped out in a surprise attack. He called Dragon, saying he was going to grab a boat and head back. 2 years later, we see a woman with pink hair on a ship with a crying child. But the girl started laughing when she touched the blue stones on her mother's face. Calling the girl Bonnie, she says they finally made it. Ivankov rushes to tell Kuma that they just got a call from Ginny. They were both over the moon hearing each other's voices. She says she made it back, and they almost set off fireworks in their ears. But then she says she's sick and was discarded by the celestial dragon. Kuma didn't get it and asked where she was, but she told him she just called to say goodbye because she wouldn't last much longer. He collapsed after hearing that, and she thanked him for all his kindness, but begged him not to come see her again. No one knew what was happening, and Kuma ran out of there, shouting that there's only one place she could come back to. Ginny told Dragon and Ivankov to take care of Kuma because he's too kind. She told Kuma she would love him forever. At that moment, Kuma was flying faster than Super straight to their church. He barged in, asking where Ginny was, but only found her lying on the ground. He asked what happened to her, and an old woman said she came back covered in crystals. She said if Ginny was exposed to sunlight, her skin would turn blue and hard as stone. Kuma broke down crying, remembering all the moments he had with her, especially when she asked him to marry her. But while he was crying, he noticed there was also a baby crying on the ground. The villagers explained that in order to make sure her baby could live, Ginny crossed the seas full of sunlight to get here while she was still alive. Kuma promised Ginny not to worry because he would take care of her baby. That's how he became Bonnie's adoptive father, who turns out was the blood daughter of a filthy Tenryubito. After burying Ginny, he went back to living at the church. He tried feeding Bonnie with a bottle, but the old woman yelled at him for doing it wrong. She said he was going to drown the girl with his big hands. They also told him to put her to sleep in a metal cage so he wouldn't crush her with his giant body. After many tries, he finally got the bottle thing right. Then the elders started joking that Bonnie would grow up to be as hungry as Ginny. It did not take long for her to start walking and calling Kuma Daddy. And of course, the big guy cried like a baby out of pure joy. Time passed, and little Bonnie kept growing fast, eating like a construction worker and staying with the neighbors while Kuma had to head off to war again. But he always came back to keep his promise of protecting little Bonnie. He fought side by side with the Revolutionary Army and even helped train little Sabo. But one day, he came back home and saw Bonnie with the same crystal on her face as her mother. Kuma immediately boarded up all the windows, and the neighbors were like, "What are you doing, man?" He told them to shut the door and revealed the gemstone growing on Bonnie's cheek. They were about to say it was the same disease that killed Ginny, but he yelled for them to shut it, so they ran to get a doctor. But that fool did not believe sunlight made it worse and tried to take the poor girl outside to test it. Then they called another doctor who said it was not lead syndrome. She was sorry, but she had never seen anything like it. Kuma told Bonnie not to worry, that everything was going to be fine. A few days later, Ivankov was freaking out because Kuma was leaving the Revolutionary Army. And even worse, Bonnie had the same sickness as her mom. Kuma said he needed to be with her, so Dragon told him he understood, and to go live his life with no regrets. He said they would start asking doctors all over the world if there was any kind of cure. Years passed, and Bonnie turned 5, and she was already wreaking havoc on the neighborhood boys. But they were calling her a vampire and hanging outside the church since she could not step into the sunlight. One of them got drop-kicked straight to the Shadow Realm for getting too bold. Kuma rushed in, begging her to be careful. Just seeing her near the door gave him a panic attack. She called him a scaredy cat, but said she did not want to see him sad. She was super upset because those bratty boys were making fun of her face gems again. She asked if she looked weird, but it was a disease, and there was nothing she could do. That is when Kuma appeared next to her and said her crystals looked beautiful, and he was sure those boys were just jealous they did not have any. Bonnie lit up right away. Kuma asked where she wanted to go once she got better. She said she wanted to visit Skypiea, but Kuma did not even know Sky Islands were a thing. She said the Sky Island is close to the sun, so maybe they would meet Nika up there. Kuma instantly started dancing like a lunatic, doing the Nika dance, and Bonnie ran up and started dancing with him. The big bear said it was going to be a blast when she turned 20 and they would go there together. And when she was 19, she said she wanted to visit Fishman Island. That night, the doctor told Kuma her illness was called sapphire scales, and he said if she was exposed to sunlight or moonlight, the crystals would keep spreading. But even if she avoided light, the disease would still grow. Kuma was in shock. He asked if there was no cure at all, saying Bonnie had to survive no matter what. The doctor told him the hard truth. Bonnie only had 5 years left to live. She would not even make it to her 10th birthday. There was still no cure for that illness. Kuma walked home in a daze, thinking this could not be real. She was growing up strong and happy. He could not accept there was no way to fix this. But when he got home, Bonnie jumped out and scared the life out of him. He told her she should be sleeping, but she said she heard something about 10 years. Kuma could not tell her the truth, so he said she would be cured by the time she turned 10. She got all excited and asked if they would travel together when she turned 10. He said of course they would. Another year passed, and the nightmare returned to Sorbet Kingdom. The elders ran to the church yelling that King Bikori was back. After 16 years, that demon had returned to haunt the kingdom again. He was threatening to burn alive everyone who was dragging the kingdom down, and that monster had already started slicing up civilians like it was not already bad enough. The village is literally on fire. Kuma's running around, saving everyone who couldn't escape the flames. The villagers are screaming, cursing the king, saying they'll never forgive him for what he did. Kuma spots a kid crying because her mom didn't make it out. Without thinking, he charges right back into the fire to get her. Meanwhile, that scumbag Bikori is talking about cleansing the city like he's some hero. Yeah, sure. Then one of his guards runs up to warn him about some angry protesters at the castle gate, shouting that they're murderers and demanding they put out the fire. What does Bikori do? Orders his guards to shoot 4 or 5 of them as an example, saying, anyone who dares challenge me gets the same treatment. Just as things are about to get worse, Kuma shows up, furious, and takes down the guards in seconds, causing explosions everywhere. Back at the church, people are tending to the wounded, while Bonnie waits for her dad to come back. They tell her to stay inside because of the moonlight, but she's more worried about her dad than herself. Is dad going to be okay? She wonders, but she's more concerned about the people at the castle. Kuma had already taken out all the royal guards, and the cowardly king was trying to bribe him, saying he'd give him the area he burned down, and that he cleaned up all the trash. Big mistake. Kuma remembers the time he came back carrying the girl's mom in his arms after she was roasted alive in the fire. The king tries to act tough, shooting Kuma 12 times in the chest. The problem? Kuma's body is tougher than any tank, and he doesn't even flinch. He smashes the gun with his bare hands, while the king is screaming, threatening that there'll be consequences for attacking him. But Kuma's done with talking. All that anger he's been holding in, he uses it to prepare to blow the king and his entire palace sky high. This moment is remembered as the lone revolution of the Sorbet Kingdom. Back in Mariajois, the Gorosei are trying to figure out who took down the king of Sorbet. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, the people are celebrating and chanting Kuma's name. He's the new king of Sorbet, living in the church like a legend. Then something bizarre happens. A girl is training and people freak out because she looks exactly like Ginny. She asks why they're so surprised and says she's going to travel with her dad when she turns 10. But then, when she looks in the mirror, she freaks out and turns back into a little kid. People are like, what kind of transformation was that? Even Bonnie doesn't know. Kuma nearly faints from all the emotions. Someone suggests it's the age fruit, so they ask her to try it again, but she can't. That's when they find an old lady passed out on the ground. 2 goofballs mistake her for Bonnie. The old lady's talking to a guy who wants to speak with the king. This guy? Bulldog, the former king of Sorbet, helping Kuma run the country. And that old lady? Her mom, who somehow hasn't kicked the bucket yet. But guess what? Kuma can't catch a break. The papers are saying he set fire to a village and took the throne by force. Of course, they blame Bikori because he's got the government's backing. They're saying he'll come back to reclaim the throne. Bulldog hears about the Navy ships coming to Sorbet, and the old folks are panicking, saying they don't want to live through that nightmare again. Kuma's like, if he comes back, I'll take down his forces and whatever else he sends. But if he does, he'll become a criminal and have to leave the country. He tells Bulldog to take over the throne if that happens, and promises to protect Bonnie because the church will be in danger. Kuma tells Bonnie to behave, and he'll be back as soon as he can. But he messes up and says this to the wrong person, the real old lady, not the fake one. She hugs him, saying she doesn't want him to leave. But hey, with great power comes great responsibility. So, after all that, Kuma goes solo to defend the kingdom. He shows up like, y'all got some serious guts coming back here, and he's about to square up with not one, not two, but three ginormous Navy warships. Bakori's over there screaming, "That's the criminal tyrant who stole my throne! Take him down!" But Kuma blasts off like Buzz Lightyear with rage in his eyes and nuclear energy in his fists, and sinks all the ships in one single move like it's a pirate version of Bowling Night. After that, he dipped out to sea and officially became a wanted man. Bonnie was missing him like crazy, and the old lady told her that Kuma was a hero. But the little rebel yells that when she turns 10 and gets better, she's gonna be a pirate too, because you know, she can age herself up and all. Meanwhile, Kuma's out there traveling the world, hunting for a cure for Bonnie. He asks around if anyone knows a disease that makes sunlight dangerous, but no one's even heard of that nonsense. Some clowns even try to capture him for the bounty, but end up face down in the dirt wondering what went wrong. Still, Kuma keeps going, thinking about how Bonnie only has 5 years left max. She might not even make it to 10. One day, while out at sea, he crosses paths with the Revolutionary Army. They ask what he's doing out there, so they sit down for a drink. Kuma chilling with Bello Betty on his shoulder like it's Casual Tuesday. Dragon says Ivankov and Inazuma got locked up, and jokes about how Kuma went from revolutionary to tyrant king to pirate real quick. Of course, no one there's buying the government's fairy tale. Betty asks Kuma what he thinks about her becoming the Eastern Force captain, the spot Ginny used to hold, and she wants to honor her name. Kuma gives the nod, and she lights up like a kid on Christmas. The absentee dad says Sabo, Koala, and the crew all want to see him too. Kuma would love to rejoin them, but he just can't. Not yet. Dragon says he has a lead on Bonnie's condition. He asks Kuma if he's heard of Dr. Vegapunk, and says after a recent incident, the doc is relocating to a new lab. Normally, the guy's impossible to reach, but now security is weak. Kuma asks if Vegapunk could possibly cure Bonnie, and Dragon's like, it's a shot. So Kuma thanks him, saying he was about to give up hope. But now, he's fired up again. If Bonnie gets better, promises to fight alongside them once more. Dragon tells him to let the winds of fate guide the way. Then, Kuma heads back to the Sorbet Kingdom and finds Bonnie beating up some poor guard. She says she trains every day because she's ready to hit the high seas. Kuma tells her the time has come. He packs her in a barrel and smuggles her all the way to Vegapunk's lab. The old man takes one look at Kuma and nearly drops dead. He says he's never seen anything like him. Though with that giant dome of a head, he might have actually been taller than Kuma if you count the cranium. Bonnie pops out the barrel and goes, "Dang, you really got a massive head." Vegapunk examines her and says, "Kuma's done a great job slowing down the sapphire scale disease." Then he says there might be a way to cure her, and Kuma almost has a heart attack on the spot. They celebrate like they just won the lottery. Vegapunk says he'll use a tech that even top doctors don't know yet. Stem cell magic, basically. But it'll take a truckload of time and money, almost like building a cyborg from scratch. Then, after running tests, the doc nearly loses his dentures when he finds out Kuma's a buccaneer, and those guys are wanted by the world government. Kuma says he trusts Dragon and asks what's different about his blood. Vegapunk says he doesn't have enough samples to figure it out yet, but he wants to use Kuma's DNA to create an army of invincible clone soldiers. So he offers a deal. Donate your blood and give me permission to clone you, and I'll waive all the costs for Bonnie's treatment. Kuma's like, of course I'll do it, but I need to know what you're gonna do with those clones. Vegapunk explains they'll be soldiers for the Navy, loaded with lasers, missiles, and enough firepower to turn pirates into toast. Kuma says, if one of those clones saves even a single life, then my life was worth it. Vegapunk says Dragon's gonna flip when he hears about this, but Kuma replies, if it saves Bonnie, I'd make a deal with the devil himself. And this man used to be a pastor, by the way. The doc calls him a saint, but Kuma says he's just a pacifist who wants peace. Vegapunk likes that so much, he decides to name the future warriors after it, Pacifistas. Meanwhile, that snake Saturn is over there saying clone soldiers are just weapons, and Vegapunk is wasting their potential. So he comes up with an idea so evil, it might just ruin Kuma's entire life. Out by the coast of Lab 8, none other than Borsellino Kizaru shows up, talking about how cold it is out here, way different from the microwave setting that is Punk Hazard. Vegapunk's all excited like, this is where I'll rebuild the future of humanity. But Kizaru's like, bro, you've been here forever and still get lost walking to the bathroom. and shows him a Den Den Mushi screen revealing that the world government's been spying on him the whole time. Vegapunk asks what he's doing here, and the Admiral drops the bomb that every convo in this place has been recorded. And chatting in secret with pirates? Yeah, not exactly good for your health. Vegapunk groans and says he hates when Kizaru does this. Kizaru just shrugs, "I'm just doing my job." And he didn't come alone. There's a whole army camped outside, including X-Drake. Then that fossil Saturn calls in and says that while Kuma might be the perfect base for clone soldiers, he's still a pirate with a bounty of 296 million berries. Not exactly poster boy material. Vegapunk argues that if the project works, it could save tons of lives. Saturn's like, "Sure. If it works, our power levels go Super Saiyan." But then he drops the fine print. First condition, Kuma has to become one of the 7 warlords. Apparently, some rookie named Ace just knocked out one of the current Sea Lords. Yup, that's our donut boy. Second condition, Kuma's gotta let them turn him into a full-on human weapon. We're talking total body makeover, cyborg edition. But then comes the nuclear bomb of conditions. Since Kuma used to roll with the Revolutionary Army, they can't risk him turning that new power against the government. So, third condition, he's got to give up his free will. Yup, no more thoughts, no more decisions, just a big robotic golden retriever for the Marines. Vegapunk is beyond horrified. He's like, "That's not surgery, that's execution." He asks if they really want him to turn this man into a killer machine, and Saturn calmly replies that scientists don't get to argue, they just follow orders. And those are the 3 lovely options if you want to save a criminal's daughter. And while all this shady business is going down, Bonnie's happily skipping through the lab thinking she's about to be cured. Vegapunk's whispering to himself that this ain't science, it's cold-blooded murder, but there's no way out. Refuse, and that army outside is coming in hot for Kuma. So Kuma says, "Do it." He knew Saturn would ask for something insane to save Bonnie. But if all it takes is his life, he'll gladly trade it for hers. Even Kizaru and the old Doc can't hold back the field. Meanwhile, Bonnie is trolling a giant guard, slipping between his legs like it's a game. Saturn asks how long the surgery and full treatment will take. Vegapunk says curing the sapphire scale disease will take 6 months. Then she needs another year before she can go out into the sunlight again. So, about a year and a half. As for Kuma's mods, those will take 2 years at least. Kuma breathes a sigh of relief. Bonnie will be okay before she hits 10. But Saturn quickly reminds him, "Your daughter is a hostage. Once she's healed, your leash gets cut." Which means the world government takes full custody of Bonnie. And she only goes free when Kuma gives up his free will. But that also means Kuma will never get to see her again once she recovers. Of course, Saturn couldn't care less about Kuma's request. He basically told him that once the surgeries on Bonnie are done, Kuma's banned from contacting her or even looking at her. And if he breaks that rule, the girl gets turned into a slave. Kuma, now totally freaking out, says he'll never see her again. He's got one request. He doesn't want Bonnie to know the truth about her condition or the fact that she's a hostage. So after the surgery, instead of locking her in some government facility, he asks that she be allowed to rest in the kingdom of Sorbet's church where she grew up. And then finally, the despicable Saturn does a half-decent thing for one. He says if she's being monitored, she can stay anywhere. Kuma leaves the lab and heads straight for Bonnie. Sentomaru tries talking to Kizaru but gets ignored like a text from your mom. Kuma tells him they'll be staying here for the next 6 months, and Bonnie is all hyped that he'll be staying too. And the Father of the Year asks Sentomaru to look after little Bonnie, please. Meanwhile, Vegapunk's been grinding non-stop, working on his dream weapon. He's looking for someone to help him write down his genius ideas. Basically, someone who eats and poops for him. All he wants is 5 more versions of himself to help. And so, the Vegapunk satellites were born. Funny how the one who would betray them turned out to be the one who only had to eat and poop. Bonnie's already getting ready for surgery. Afterwards, she's bothering the cute cake to play with her. And with that puppy dog face, he had no choice but to say yes. Meanwhile, Kuma's enduring all the pain of becoming a cyborg. Every time he finished, he'd find Bonnie riding Sentomaru like a horse. He wanted in on the fun, but one glare from the fatso was enough to snap him back to reality. Bonnie's all dirty, drawing something for Kuma, and he promises to cherish it forever. Vegapunk's over there, cracking up watching these two together. Bonnie's made friends with everyone at the lab. She left her exam room starving, but caught a whiff of something and bolted straight to the kitchen. What did she find? Kuma and Sentomaru making a delicious-looking mozzarella and pepperoni pizza. Even Kizaru showed up to join the feast. Kuma and Bonnie started doing the Nika dance, and Vegapunk jumped in like it was a party. Sentomaru wasn't having any of this nonsense, but was forced to join the dance by Uncle Borsellino, and they all had a blast dancing and shaking it. 6 months later, Vegapunk says Bonnie is doing great. Just one more year, and she'll be completely healed. She asks if she can still visit him once she's better, and the old man's practically glowing, saying, "Of course you can." She's chilling in a barrel, saying she really wants to see and Kuma tells her, "You'll see it soon enough." They head back to Kingdom Sorbet, and the people there welcome them with open arms. Bonnie says in a year, she'll be healed and able to leave the house. And somehow, Old Lady Connie is still alive, saying they'll take great care of Bonnie. Kuma tells her that he's now a pirate and won't be back for at least a year. But don't worry, he'll send her lots of letters. Bonnie says she wants to travel with her daddy after that, and he'll take her anywhere in the world. At least, that's what he wants. Since after this, he won't be able to see the poor girl ever again. An agent from CP8, named Alpha, says she'll take good care of Bonnie. She'll stay with her until she's fully healed per the medical orders. Honestly, I think I need to get sick if that means I get an agent like her. She says it's a pleasure to meet Bonnie, but her face is so intimidating it's scaring the poor child. And they're even building a base next to the church to keep an eye on her. The shady character looks at Kuma and says, "A kid's neck cracks real easy, you know?" Kuma just looks back and says, "I know that, and I'm never coming back to see her again." He went to Bonnie, thanked her for being born, and said goodbye, telling everyone not to worry about her. But deep down, he could barely hold back the tears, knowing he'd never see his little girl again. Even though people were calling him a tyrant, Kuma was as obedient as a golden retriever, and soon became one of the 7 Shichibukai. Pirates from all over the world heard the news. Even Doflamingo like, "Great, another big shot joins the club." Crocodile and Robin were gearing up to pull off their plan to steal the entire reign of Alabasta. Mihawk was out there exploding ships. Alvida said he was as big as Whitebeard and asked Kobe, "Who's stronger, me or him?" And, of course, the kid answered, "She's the strongest in the world." Ace was cracking up, telling Jinbei they found a replacement, but he was like, it wouldn't be a problem if Ace hadn't taken down Hanafuda. You know, Ulti's dad. And even that bum Teach was in the crew back then. In the land of women, Hancock couldn't care less about this. She wasn't even thinking of heading to the center. But Gloriosa was like, even so, the Serpent Princess needs to know about these things. In Thriller Bark, Gecko Moria was cracking jokes about the paw fruit of the new Shichibukai. Meanwhile, the revolutionaries couldn't believe Kuma had joined the 7 Warlord, considering they worked directly for the world government. Kuma had made a pirate flag with the design Bonnie made for him while sending her tons of letters, saying he'd become pretty famous and it'd be hard to come back for a while. He told her he wanted to travel to lots of places with her once she turned 10. Meanwhile, Luffy was still not even a pirate, but he was already beating up tigers in the forest, and Kuma was chilling in East Blue, ready to carry out an order from the world government. Kuma was watching Luffy take down a giant rock with a kick that split it in half. Luffy was cracking up, asking the animals if that wasn't the coolest thing ever. With that power, he could take on anyone. He even said that not even Ace could beat him. Kuma remembers when he said that dragons seemed really familiar with this country. He even visited this small village to observe a boy. But then the absent father told him to stop talking like that, or he'd end up killing him. Because let's be honest, any dad's weakness is their kids. So Kuma went back to Luffy and said that his new ultimate move would be called the Rubber Axe. He said that one day Luffy would have a crew and they might get into danger, so he'll show up with his rubber axe to knock out everyone. Meanwhile, Tiger and Lizard were totally panicking, and Luffy said he wasn't going to eat those cowards. Then Kuma's Den Den Mushi started ringing, and Luffy ran after it, saying that the presence gave him chills, but he thought it was the mountain boss, so he ran up and smashed a mountain. While Kuma was listening to news about pirates attacking a merchant ship and fleeing, he flew over to help. But instead of dealing with the pirates, he grabbed an injured merchant to take to the hospital. And of course, the government was not happy at all because they wanted him to fight instead. Later that night, Kuma went after the scoundrel, demanding they surrender. And of course, they obeyed because they knew they stood no chance in a fight with him. After that, he wrote another letter to Bonnie, telling her how beautiful the world is and how he can't wait to see her face when she gets to see all of this. Back in Sorbet Kingdom, poor Bonnie kept opening and closing the mailbox, hoping that somehow a letter from her dad would magically appear. The villagers said Kuma must be busy, or maybe the seagull got lost, but Bonnie wasn't having it. She just wanted her dad's letter. Then suddenly a letter arrived along with the newspaper, and Alpha told them to deliver it to the church mailbox. Bonnie ran over, asking if it was a letter, but it was just a newspaper. Alpha was pissed, saying they've received dozens of letters already, and this jerk never gives up. She mocked him, saying she loved Bonnie a lot, and then ripped up the letter just like she had done with all the others. Bonnie was getting frustrated and wanted to vent her anger on someone, so she transformed into a gorilla and called out Gyogyo, "Fight!" But then Alpha showed up to give her medicine, and Grandma Connie told Bonnie to turn back into her original form. Alpha got a quick glimpse and was like, "Am I seeing things? Is she an enormous woman?" She then gave Bonnie some medicine. Tasted awful. Turns out it was just a soda. Did terrible. A good old placebo. Grandma Connie told Bonnie she needs to keep her abilities a secret for her safety. A wise wolf hides its fangs. You know, Grandma knows what's up. Meanwhile, over at Laboratory 8, Stussy was shocked that one of Vegapunk's inventions was ready. Now he just needed to send the lab and his brain to the sky with the insular clouds. Stussy said she liked the new cut, though it was a head cut, not a haircut. He chopped off that mountain he called his brain and replaced it with an apple antenna. Stussy arrived at the lab, saying she'd heard Kuma was going to lose his free will, and she wanted to know if that was worse than her situation, having free will but being just a clone. Vegapunk told her to stop because, guess what? She's human too. Kuma asks what it means to lose free will, and the old man says he's basically going to lose all his human emotions. So if the world government tells him to eliminate a kid, for example, he'll just do it without thinking twice. Kuma says he's fine with it, but Stussy calls him out, saying that no one could accept that kind of thing so easily. Vegapunk then says he'll make sure to keep a minimum level of free will until everything is done. Kuma's got about a year until then. So he starts writing another letter because as long as he has time, he wants to keep telling Bonnie how much he loves her. He'll write letters for her entire life. Stussy was practically ready to marry this guy on the spot, imagining her future with him. Meanwhile, back in Sorbet Kingdom, they celebrated Bonnie's birthday with a huge pizza. The girl was thrilled because who doesn't love pizza? They had a blast all night long. Later that night, she kept checking the mailbox, but of course, no letter from her dad. She started crying because not even on her 9th birthday did her dad send her a letter. Honestly, sometimes I just want to see that Alpha get hit by a truck. She deserves it. At the Revolutionary HQ, Dragon heard that Kuma saved them again. He helped the revolutionaries out of a sticky situation, but they said he left without saying a word. Dragon told them to leave him alone. He must have a reason for this, something he can't talk about. After some time, Bonnie was finally cured. All the stones were gone. She really wanted to go outside, but that Alpha lady showed up again saying she couldn't, because she's under orders to look after her until she turns 10. Bonnie calls her a liar because Vegapunk said she'd be cured in a year. And guess what? It's been a year. She tries to run out, shouting for them to leave her alone. But that Alpha lady grabs her by the arm, leaving a bruise on Bonnie, who'd never been hit by anyone, not even her dad. Then, Grandma Connie spills the tea. Alpha and her friends aren't nurses. They're government intelligence agents. Everyone was shocked to learn that Alpha wasn't really a nurse. She says Bonnie was way ahead of the cure, and that it's strange to keep a healthy girl locked up for over 6 months. She also finds it weird that Kuma hasn't sent a letter yet, right? So Grandma tells Bonnie to go to the sea and find her dad. She hands her the hat, saying, "You'll definitely see him again." The next day, Alpha was on guard at the gate, and Connie said she was heading back to the palace. And boom! Alpha fell right into the trap. Grandma told her the Gyogyo group wasn't just a bunch of regular fishermen. They're so strong they scare even pirates and sea monsters. Yeah, I can totally see him losing to an 8-year-old, right? But they'll help her find Kuma. After 9 years, little Bonnie finally felt the land, the wind, and the water of the world. If you added fire, she'd be the literal avatar. And actually, she switched back to her child form to trick Alpha, because she was too old to fool her now. The old folks were crying with joy because Bonnie really made it outside. The moment she saw the sea, she was in awe. Back at the church, that scumbag Alpha was losing her mind because she couldn't find Bonnie. She asked where the girl was and freaked out when she saw Queen Connie, since, you know, she had just left. And Grandma went full crazy mode, claiming she was Bonnie. Meanwhile, the real Bonnie was even more excited because Gyogyo had made the ship look pizza. Alpha was livid, asking how dare the girl trick her. She went off, saying she was going to make her pay. The crew was ready to set sail, but then Alpha showed up to make the port panic. She said if the hostage escapes, she could use any non-lethal force to capture her. The guys were shaking in their boots when they saw she was using Rokushiki. Bonnie started crying, wondering what she was supposed to do. But then she looked up and saw Nika. He was a bit too chubby to be Nika, but whatever. She smiled and transformed into her adult form. Then she used a warped future to pull off an attack similar to the one Kuma told her was Nika. Alpha said she knew she could transform, but she still took a massive hit to the face that made her look like a squashed bug. Bonnie's escape was immediately reported to the world government, and that fishing boat searching for Kuma turned into a new era pirate ship, just like Luffy's. Out at sea, Bonnie was trying to put on her lipstick when everyone started yelling her name, but it was just because they had finally reached the island where Kuma was. So she got all excited to anchor. The whole crew ran out, and the Marines were already ready to arrest the criminals. They say these guys leave a trail of injured elderly and children wherever they go, and they were mad because these cowards only attack the weak. They were about to start shooting, but Bonnie came in like a wrecking ball, using an age-piercing attack that turned the guys into old people and children. They kept looking for Kuma, who was hiding from her. They couldn't meet, so he teleported far away. The girl was pissed that they couldn't find him. She says she also wants to look for Nika, because Kuma's definitely going to be thrilled when he hears that she found Nika on one of the islands she visited. Meanwhile, Luffy and the crew had just beat down Arlong's pirates, and the captain got his first bounty poster worth 30 million. After that, Dragon headed straight for Logtown, which was under the protection of Captain Smoker. Ace was bragging that his brother was worth 30 million, and Jinbei couldn't believe that his brother defeated Arlong, and Kuma was smiling, saying that his daughter and Dragon's son became pirates. Bonnie said her crew could loot whatever they wanted, but only from the bad guy. She even got a piercing on her cheek so Kuma might recognize her. Now she just needed to get famous, and then he'd definitely notice her. Or at least, that's what she thought. Over in Egghead, Kuma was walking past all the new pacifistas. Vegapunk asked if he heard about the kid who declared war on the world government. He was shocked when he found out he was Dragon's son. The kid literally has Monkey D in his name, just like Dragon, and even with his massive brain, Vegapunk didn't know that. Kuma said there's no reason to hide it from him since he'll have access to all his memories, and said the kid is just like Nika, his hero. After the Straw Hats defeated Gecko Moria, Kuma appeared, saying the world government sent him to eliminate them all. But all they needed to do was hand over Luffy's head to survive. And as you know, they all refused and told Kuma to screw off. So, he blew up the whole island, and Zoro offered to sacrifice his life in Luffy's place, resulting in simply the most epic scene in all of One Piece to this day. And Kuma says Dragon's son really has some good comrades. Then he got a mandatory summons from the Shichibukai, saying if he didn't show up, he'd lose his Corsair title. This was because Portgas D. Ace's execution was scheduled. The poor guy was still laughing his ass off just moments ago. But this execution was definitely going to spark a war against the Whitebeard pirates, and Kuma says he'll be there when the time comes. Bonnie's crew was over at Sabaody, with the captain stuffing her face, complaining that they were taking too long to bring more pizza. And the doting father was watching her from the window, looking like an elephant hiding behind a pole. But this was the last time he'd see his daughter, and he was proud of how strong she's become. Out of nowhere, everyone started running because a pirate punched a Tenryubito, and Kuma was in shock when he saw it was at a human auction. He was already shocked, but he lost it when he saw it was the Straw Hats beating the brakes off the Celestial Dragons. He could not believe they were actually protecting a fishman and a mermaid. He told Luffy that what he did might be considered a betrayal that no one had dared to pull off in centuries. That is why he chose to save the Straw Hats, who were about to get wiped out by the pacifistas, by launching each one to a different island to get stronger. Luffy was bawling his eyes out because he could not even protect a single crew member. But Kuma knew that was not true. They just were not ready yet to face the monsters in the New World, and he says that one day, Luffy will save the world. After that, Saturn ordered Vegapunk to install a self-destruct system inside Kuma. He was afraid Kuma might lose control if no Elder was around to keep him on a leash. Vegapunk tried to bargain, asking to preserve just a tiny bit of Kuma's free will. But Saturn, in true villain fashion, said there should be absolutely nothing left, and reminded Vegapunk that he was also a scientist, so no funny business. Vegapunk told him that if they wipe everything out, Kuma will never see Bonnie again, and that demon Saturn just hung up like a total jerk. Then Kuma thanked him for the kindness, and Vegapunk was shocked, asking how he heard that call. only to realize he was the one who gave Kuma super hearing in the first place. Sentomaru stayed off the island. He could not bear to watch what was about to happen, because the day had finally come for Kuma to lose 100% of his free will. It was basically a cold-blooded execution. Vegapunk said they had only known each other for 2 years, but they were good times. He told him his first mission would be at the war against the Whitebeard pirates. Then Kuma asked him to assign one more mission after that, to protect the Straw Hat's ship until one of them came back. Because Luffy's actions moved his soul. He said Nika might just be a myth, but if anyone could save the world and bring smiles to everyone, he believed it was Luffy. And after that, Kuma fulfilled his final promise. He created a copy of all his memories. And of course, those memories included the day he was born, the day he lost his parents, when he was enslaved by the Celestial Dragons, when he met Ginny and shared happy times with her, until losing her to the Sapphire Scale disease, and then raising little Bonnie and finding out she only had 5 years left to live because of the same illness. He gave up his entire life to save his beloved daughter, and he did it with pride and a full heart. Kuma once asked if he was a burden to people, but Dr. Vegapunk, crying his eyes out, said Kuma's death would be a loss to everyone who loved him, because he was a hero to Bonnie and to all of them. And with a heavy heart, he pulled the lever that stripped Kuma of his last drop of freedom. In his final moments, Kuma thanked him for saving Bonnie one last time and asked him to wish her a happy 10th birthday when they meet. And of course, Bonnie couldn't hold back her tears after seeing all of Kuma's memories and how much pain he went through his whole life. In the next episode, we're finally going back to Egghead, and even though Bonnie is full of rage, she'll be completely cornered by that monster Saturn until a miracle happens and the real Kuma shows up to fight and try to save his daughter once again. The title of the next episode is I Am Sorry, Dad. Bonnie's tears and Kuma's punch. Man, I dare you to name a sadder backstory than Kuma's. For real, I have never seen someone suffer that much from birth until now. But after all this heartbreak, it is finally time to get back to some good old action. So if you want me to bring the next episode as soon as it drops, comment One Piece 1136. Smash that like button and subscribe if you are not already, so we can hit 1 million by the end of the year. And check out the next video on screen. It is absolutely insane. I am out of here. Thanks and peace.